Good evening, everyone. As we begin this meeting, I'll ask that all present silence their cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw forbids the use of mobile devices during council and committee meetings. It is 6:30 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order and begin with a formal territorial acknowledgement. The Municipality of Brighton Council recognizes and acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, now of Alderville. These peoples agreed through treaties with the Crown to mutual sharing obligations and responsibilities as stewards of the lands and waters. We recognize that these are now our shared obligations and partnership to continue to protect the land and water that we now know as Brighton. In doing our work, we honor the Indigenous ancestors who came before us and who continue to be present in lands which we occupy. We acknowledge and honor the First Nations who continue to hold and share their rich history, traditions, and cultures that are proud, modern, and vibrant. As we move forward, we hope that every time we gather, we acknowledge all of those who came before us. And I have a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Frettis, that Council approve the November 20th, 2023 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. And there are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Earlier today, our fire chief was elected as a director of the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs at the conference in Niagara Falls. This will help in many ways put Brighton on the map and help with resources. He did come to me and say, do you think council would be supportive? And I said, anything you can do to help Brighton out would be supported by council. So we congratulate Chief Thompson for his electoral success, and we can't wait to see what happens next. That brings us to the adoption of the minutes, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Frettis, that council adopt the November 6, 2023 council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Frettis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, the council adopt the November 13th, 2023 council planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. We have no public meeting portion of this meeting. We have no delegations or presentations listed. Madam Clerk, are you aware of any citizens' comment this evening? Brings us to staff reports. First report is with regard to the 2024 council planning meeting schedule. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council received the staff report regarding the council planning meeting schedule for 2024, and that the 2024 meeting schedule be changed to the following: regular council meeting Monday, January 8th, planning meeting Monday, January 15th, cancel the regular council January 22nd due to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference, move the council planning meetings for August from the 3rd week to the 2nd week, regular council August 12th and planning August 14th, and further that staff be directed to advertise the changes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next report is the assumption for public use of roads and all related above and below ground services and utilities, including the Tackaberry Ridge Stormwater Facility, Tackaberry Ridge East Subdivision. And Mr. Gooding, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council received the staff report regarding the assumption for public use of roads and all related above and below ground services and utilities, including the Tackaberry Ridge Stormwater Facility, Tackaberry Ridge East Subdivision, And further, that council enacts a bylaw to assume for public use all related above and below ground services and utilities specifically identified in registered plan 39M 918, being Tackaberry Ridge East Subdivision, and including the Tackaberry Ridge Stormwater Facility in accordance with the letter from the municipal solicitor dated November 10th, 2023, Tackaberry Drive, Harrier Run, Singleton Street, and further that staff be directed to notify the Ministry of the Environment, Parks and Conservation. That's not correct. It's the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. MECP. In change in ownership to the municipality for certificate of approvals 0328-782 HGX dated October 24th, 2007, 5510 AQGKHS dated August 31st, 2017, and further that the current securities held in accordance with Tackaberry Ridge East Subdivision agreement be released. And further that if required, prior to the mayor's signature, the municipal solicitor and the director of planning and development be authorized to make minor revisions to the assumption bylaw as may be necessary to address refinement of attached schedules or to reflect legal descriptions, block numbers, etc. And further that the municipal solicitor be directed to register the assumption bylaw at the Northumberland County Registry Office and have the authority to revise the bylaw so far as necessary for the purposes of registration. Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, I've made an amendment to this, just changing the wording on the ministry. Is that okay with you? Councillor Wright, is that okay with you as a seconder? Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair to Director Whiteman, just some questions for clarification, if I may. The Stormwater Master Plan indicated on page 185 that an enhanced level of treatment was required for the pond. On page 186 that the owner was required to install erosion and sediment control. On page 187 that sediment accumulation had left only 14% of the original pond available, and that the remaining storage only provided 67% sediment removal efficiency, well below the enhanced level allowable of 80%. Page 187 stated that the deficient erosion control practices was the key cause. 186 stipulated that a logbook of inspections, maintenance, cleaning, and material removals was to be maintained. And additionally on that page, it stipulates the creation of operations manuals. So my questions are, were all of those recommendations in the Stormwater Master Plan implemented? Secondly, do we have the documented proof that they were done? And finally, have or will we be given the service record logbooks for this pond, and have we verified them before assuming the pond? That's the first part of my questions, and perhaps I could just hold it there and allow the director to respond.
I'm going to go to Mr. Gooding to see if he has a response or if he'd prefer me to take it to the director.
To the chair, no, I can answer all of that. I guess the first part was talking about the sediment loading. I agree that the ECAs identify that about enhanced level protection. However, the original design called for normal protection. That was done, the pond was built in 2018, we had a master stormwater plan study done. That report identified those deficiencies, but then followed up with their own information and investigation and discovered that the pond was built larger and did meet the enhanced requirements. They just mentioned that the sediment loading at that time caused the facility at that time to work below that standard. Since then, the developer has cleaned out the pond, and we believe it's operating in accordance with the enhanced requirement.
Can you share some follow-ups, if I may?
Anybody else have any questions? Just carry on, Councillor Fredis.
Okay. The lawyer's letter from Municipal Council dated November 10, 23 seems to indicate that we should not assume until the subdivision is complete and further until all guarantee and warranty periods have expired. So I guess my question is, have all of the guarantee and warranty periods expired?
Mr. Gooding?
Through the chair, yes. So, pardon me, is at this stage, a year ago, we hit the, when they requested for enter in their maintenance period. 1 year of that, so that brings us to today, as the date they can ask for assumption, which then would transfer ownership and responsibility to the municipality, and there'd be no more warranty.
Carry on.
Chair, thank you. One final question. I note that the pond was cleaned in August. Can I safely assume that this was, the adequacy was verified by staff? And finally, to come back to the maintenance records, obtaining those records that were done as part of our assumption process, is that built into the whole fabric of things?
Mr. Gooding?
Through the chair is, yes, the maintenance was done. You can go there now and you can see where the tracks and whatnot are. Unfortunately, it's not very pretty just because they had to get equipment in there. So you can see where the ramps are, and that's kind of what's been left. But by spring, it'll be covered in cattails. So it has been cleaned out. With regards to the records, unfortunately, we don't have them from the developer. I mean, and basically where we're at is because they've cleaned out the pond and we verified it, and now I have a letter of certifying that from the engineer, the developer's engineer. It's almost like the pond's been reset at this point. I mean, it's cleaned out. It's as per the original design intent from day one. And in accordance to the design, it's a 45-year cycle before we have to clean it out again. The excess loading was due to a lot of the development and whatnot. So moving forward. So from a staff and operation, our end is changes we've made is starting last year. Staff started doing inspections based on our design manuals, operations requirements for these ponds. We're doing inspections on both assumed and unassumed stormwater facilities. That way this doesn't get missed in the future. So I do have a staff inspection from August prior to when they cleaned out the pond. I can check further back, but unfortunately I just don't have, there is not a long history of inspections since 2007 when the pond was originally.
I thought you might.
Councillor Fredis.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, then, Mr. Gooding, it would appear that the age-old problem of inadequate service records from developers owning ponds is kind of ongoing. If I understand you correctly, you now have protocols, procedures, and manuals in place for any ponds that we start to assume to ensure that we maintain those records, and there's protocols on the whole developing and servicing element. So you've kind of got it under control. Can I safely assume that then?
Through Chair, that's correct. And it's Sean Nielsen's who's on the Zoom. That's his position to review all that. So, and like I said, I have records of it here. So,
Director Whiteman.
And try and hold it.
You're good.
Yes. Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor. John is correct. Staff is satisfied with the conditions as stand at the moment, given that it has been cleaned out as of August 23. We do want to build our staff complement in environmental services, and that I think has become a priority. And this will be an assumed duty and responsibility of the compliance officer once he or she takes the position up. It is critical that we meet those types of needs and responsibilities from the development that is taking place, and is our every intention to do so and moving forward in terms of maintenance schedules, logbooks, etc.
Thank you, Director. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Fredis.
To the chair, in light of the director's commentary about the importance of a compliance officer, as we oversee these ponds and we start to assume more going forward, should that additional complement not be a subject of discussion at our forthcoming budget considerations?
I don't think it needs to be, because I think we've already put the position in place. It's just a matter of filling the position. So that would become an operational issue, not a. We've already created the position in the organizational chart last budget. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor of the motion? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is 2024 Fees and Charges Report. Director Whitfield, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council, I'd just like to highlight that the fees and charges for the water rates and the wastewater rates are not on this schedule. We will manage that through the water and wastewater rate study that's currently undergoing.
Being undertaken. That's the one. So the water and wastewater rates will remain the same until such time as they are changed through that study or through the consideration of council.
That's correct.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receives the 2024 Fees and Charges Report and authorizes staff to advertise for the public meeting on December 4th, 2023, and to prepare a bylaw for the December 18th, 2023 council meeting. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to the Automatic Speed Enforcement Program and 2024 Operating Budget Report. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight? I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis. I believe all he said was he has nothing to add. Yeah. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council receives a staff report regarding automatic speed enforcement system dated November 27th, 2023, and that council considers for the municipal 2024 operating budget a total cost of $120,000 and startup costs for the following expenditures in implementing an ASE system. ASE camera solar mobile unit, appropriate signage for regulatory compliance installation, cloud access for camera data, software, annual license, Ministry of Transportation authorized requester fee and per vehicle check, annual calibration test, courses and training, and the council consider for the 2024 operating budget salary and benefits for a part-time bylaw enforcement officer and an administrative support for the administrative monetary penalty screening officer, and that staff further report to council on additional business case details of an ASE program prior to incurring the above operating expenditures. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. First off, my thanks to Director Walsh for putting this report together in such a short time frame. I know the motion came very late, and it is a large volume of information and legalities to try and digest and put together. And I think it's wonderful that you were able to accomplish it. Looking at the suggestion here, you're proposing a part-time bylaw enforcement officer. And this may be the inappropriate place, but I would like to throw it out there that I think between this opportunity and STA, I think it fully warrants a full-time bylaw enforcement officer, not some individual shared with some under department. So that would be my suggestion. And Director, would you kind of concur that between those two, you could use a full-time person, and it would take some of the burden off of Mr. McGee?
To Mayor to Council, yes, I do concur. In fact, there's an earlier council resolution asking for report from staff on a part-time bylaw enforcement official's position. And that was in response to some customer service demands in some other areas. And now together with the prospect of an automatic speed enforcement program, what we're hearing and learning from other jurisdictions that staff become quite busy during the appeals proceedings. so Mr. Al McGee was a major contributor to this report. His name should be on. I'm not. I remember it being on there, but I don't see it on there now. And so he's also online for any follow-up questions. But he was at a course on Friday and has learned quite a bit more about the program. And there is quite a bit of demand on bio enforcement, as experienced in other jurisdictions. So since we're already looking at the prospect of a part-time position and dealing with short-term accommodations, that together with speed enforcement, I think definitely would warrant a full-time position.
Just a reminder that council will receive a report from the CAO with regard to human resources matters at some point during the budgetary process, and this would be a good discussion to have during that session as well. Keep that information parked just moderately to the side, because I suspect that's coming soon. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Byron, could you remind us what the potential is in terms of recouping the money that would be put out in the budget for this?
Be conservative, Councillor Ferrettas.
Yes. Well, I guess the first thing I would point to is Director Walsh's assessment of Elizabeth Street. And I concur his assessment was quite conservative. In the 1 week period, and Elizabeth is kind of an oddball situation because people view it as Highway 2 and they're accustomed to a 50 or 60K zone. And it's a fair volume of traffic. 30,000 vehicles thereabouts, as I recall, in that 5-day period, generating over $400,000. You take streets like Ontario, where the traffic volume is down in the 11,000-12,000 range. Cedar Street, Harbor Street, Baldwin Street. Any one of those, in my opinion, based on kind of prorating the data based on Elizabeth, could easily generate 100, 150, perhaps a little more. What I've seen from some of the past Black Cat studies, the numbers were a little higher than that. I would be hopeful that over time, a few tickets would modify behavior and bring speed limits down. That isn't necessarily the case in other jurisdictions. But I'm quite convinced that, and I think the director is as well, that a modest investment will basically fund the support in staffing that we need, pay for all of the stuff fairly readily, probably within a week, and leave a few dollars left over for the municipality to reinvest in other traffic calming, improving measures. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I just wanted it all on record. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of council? My question to the director and or Mr. McGee, whoever wants to take this question, will it be, or maybe Director Whitfield, will it be considered in the budget documents that any revenues will first go to cover the costs of this, or would we be? Let me just say it this way: I wouldn't want the taxpayer to pay for this without it being recouped for the purposes of this being recouped. So, and I see Director Whitfield pulling the microphone over.
Through you, Mayor. I believe that what we would do is set up a reserve system. So the cost of the expenditures would be in the budget. Currently, they're not, because we don't have this program in place, but we would put the expenditures in the budget, the anticipated revenue in the budget, and the difference being a transfer to reserve. And that's how we would at least start the program. And then perhaps council would have some other ideas on how they want to spend some of the money.
Thank you for that. So more during budget discussions. Thank you. I also guess I just want to say that although the potential revenue is significant, we would hope that over time that revenue would decrease. Because the wish here is to change behavior. The wish here is to get compliance with speed limits, or as close to compliance with speed limits as we can. And certainly our friends at the Ontario Traffic Council suggest that we never go into this for the money, that we always go into it for safety and for traffic enforcement purposes. So that's certainly my wish, and I just hope we can recoup the costs for the actual equipment. That's, if we can do that and get compliance with speeding, then I think the community wins at the end of the day. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. There are no notices of motion or motions. There's no unfinished business listed. That brings us into bylaws. First bylaw is with regard to Tackaberry Ridge, and it's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to assume for public use all related above and below ground services and utilities, including the Tackaberry Ridge Stormwater Facility installed on registered plan 39M 918, being Tackaberry Ridge East Subdivision. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next bylaw is a bylaw to constitute and appoint Committee of Adjustment, January 1st, 2023 to November 15th, 2026. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to constitute and appoint a Committee of Adjustment for the period of January 1st, 2023 to November 15th, 2026. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to reports, minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. The first is the Community Events and Civic Awards Steering Committee of October 10th, 2023, moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receive the Community Events and Civic Awards Steering Committee meeting minutes of October 10th, 2023 as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the Heritage Advisory Committee, moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The first is a recommendation that council receive the recommendation from the November 6, 2023 Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
It was my understanding that we're looking for a future presentation on this. And so I thought it best to receive rather than support.
Interim, who? Councillor Wright?
I can. There has been a proposal to move a historic hops barn that rests at the by the railroad there and by the old museum, with potentials to move it to Codrington to the market, which I think is a very interesting proposition. Lots of details that need to be worked out and would probably best be served by a delegation to come directly from the Heritage Committee, for those more in the know than myself, but it's a pretty cool idea.
So if we were to support the recommendation, we would be supporting an invitation to the Brian Todd Community Memorial Fund instead of just receiving it.
Then I'd like to switch to support. My apologies, I misread.
Not at all. Councillor Fredis, are you okay as the seconder doing that? Is there any further discussion on the motion now that's not received but now supporting? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the Committee of the Whole, it's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council adopt November 15th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Bringing us to reports and minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The first comes from the Lower Trent, and it's moved by Councillor Wright and seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council received the Lower Trent Conservation Authority following meeting minutes as presented. Source Protection Authority, April 13th, 2023 meeting minutes. Hearing Board, October 12th, 2023 meeting minutes. And the Lower Trent Conservation Board of Directors, October 12th, 2023 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Now we're on correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. It's moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley and seconded by Councillor Fredis that council receive. All right, you guys, you got to figure which one you want. You've circled two. So I'm going to read them all. That council receive or support or refer to budget request from Susan Rose for $10,000 to help with the publication of Presqu'île, What Became of the Land. And we've circled receive and refer to budget. Your circles are, but the ors made it clear to me it was going to be one or the other, but I've written and in there. If you're okay with that, Councillor Fredis, are you okay with that? Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? Motion's carried. And a resolution from the City of Cambridge, moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receive or endorse the resolution from the City of Cambridge regarding the support for Bill 21, Fixing Long-Term Care Amendment Act. Acting Deputy Mayor, are we receiving or endorsing? Endorsing. So endorsing the resolution, is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a resolution from the municipality of Wawa regarding automated speed enforcement. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council endorse the resolution from the municipality of Wawa regarding automated enforcement system. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Just to make it clear, this refers to the fact that automated speed enforcement can currently only be used in a designated community safety zone. And Wawa has asked that it be allowed to be used anywhere within a municipality. Given our previous discussion tonight, I think that that would be beneficial. Otherwise, we might end up talking about extending the community safety zone to everywhere in Brighton.
Which I can see as a likely scenario, quite frankly. So yes, I support this as well. Is there any further discussion? Sorry, Acting Deputy Mayor, I think you had your hand up. No. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. A resolution again from Wawa supporting Bill C-310. It's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley. The council receive or endorse resolution from the municipality of Wawa regarding support for Bill C-310 to increase tax credits for volunteer firefighters. Endorse. Is that okay with you, Acting Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Is there any discussion? And just for your information, Councillor Fredis and Acting Deputy Mayor, there are two froms. I have removed one of them. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Looks like Wawa is busy. Next one is also from the municipality of Wawa with regard to amending the Legislation Act 2006 to include digital publications. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive or endorse the resolution from the municipality of Wawa requesting the provincial government to make an amendment to the Legislation Act 2006 to include digital publications as an acceptable means of publication and notice requirements for provincial acts and regulations. Is that okay with you, Councillor Wheeldon? Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to FYI correspondence. The only item is the Northumberland County update. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council received for information the updates from Northumberland County, November 13th to 24th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to question period. If there are any questions from members of the gallery with regard to anything on tonight's agenda, I ask you to come forward, state your name for the record. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about items that appeared on this evening's agenda. Members are asked to state their name for the record before asking their question. A maximum of 5 minutes is set aside for question period. Language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Questions will be received and answered by the mayor or by a member of council or staff if designated by the mayor. Mr. Green.
For the record, David Green, I'm speaking to 10.4. I would encourage us to use the word automated speed enforcement rather than automatic, which is what is written, because people would then say, so I'm automatically going to get a ticket? Just something to be considered, because throughout the discussion, we refer to it as the automatic speed enforcement. And I'm curious, with the 5-day record on Elizabeth of 7,480 vehicles, I'd like to know what speed limit, what grace had been set for speed limits. And depending on that, it may be very well time to have a discussion at the PSB this Friday to suggest that with 7,480 vehicles exceeding the speed limit in 5 days, that may be a source of opportunity for the OPP. So does anyone know what the grace period was that was assigned to the 40-kilometer zone?
Director, do you know?
To the mayor, to the speaker, just a point of clarification, the grace period, could you just explain a little bit more on the grace period, if I may have that?
So typically the OPP will not enforce unless people are traveling exceeding the speed by 10 kilometers an hour or more.
I thought we were talking about a time frame, but the threshold of the speed infraction, I think it was for that particular number of 7140, that was for speed limit of that was the first increment over, so that was 5 kilometers to 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers over, if I recall correctly.
And an automated system could do that and generate a ticket, and whereas an in-person officer be highly suspect they would enforce it at 5 over. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members in the gallery? Thank you. And there's no one on Zoom for that purpose. So that will bring us to the in-camera session, and you prefer me to go into closed session and then take the recess by. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council resolve itself into closed session November 20th, 2023 at 7:08 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act, RSO 2001 as amended. Subsection 239(2)K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, medical funding services agreement, lease agreements, and B, labor relations or employee negotiations, CAO recruitment process, and E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administration tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, an update on pending legal matter. Is there any discussion from members of council? And I will just note for the record that when we do go into closed session, the YouTube stream will end and we will not return to the YouTube stream when we come back into open session. All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We will take a 10-minute recess, reconvening at 7:20 p.m.